Hi guys, welcome back to this week's vlog. So I thought I would do my riding story slash journey from where it all started until now, and I thought it's the best day to do it because I'm currently sat looking after my uncle's dogs because they're on holiday, so I've got nothing else to do and I'd only be watching TV. So let's get started. I've got all my footage on my iPad and I'm going to try my best to remember, guys, but I have such a bad memory I can't even remember what I done last week. So I'm going to try my best to remember what happened 10-12 years ago and what I done, etc. So there might be the odd little things that is wrong, but I'll try my best to remember it all. So my mum and dad was into horses before I was even born. My dad actually used to do some rodeo riding, which I'll insert an image here now. I haven't got many. And he also used to lead the jockeys on their race horses on the race days to get into their, whatever you call it, you know, as they go in their little cages. I don't know what it's called, I'm not really into racing like that. So he used to do that, and then my mum used to have 3 horses, which I don't actually have a photo of Ellie and Fitz, but just imagine a chestnut about 14-2 thoroughbred and another thoroughbred bay. I want to say he was around 16 hands to 17 hands, anywhere between then. My mum used to ride them. She'd do a bit of everything with the pair of them. My mum then also had an Exmoor called Daisy, which is really funny because originally she was actually called Dawn, but my mum hated the name, so changed it to Daisy. But it's now strange to think that we've got Dawn, the little Shetland now, that was kept her name. Sorry guys, my arm was killing me. Anyway, we were really lucky to have our own place. We had 21 acres, our own stables and everything, which was really lucky to have. So my mum had Ellie and Fitz, Daisy. My dad didn't have any horses at that time because he used to ride Fitz. And then when I was born, my dad thought it'd be a good idea to get a 2-year-old. She was a piebald and she was about 11 hands. She was called Maisie. She's had lots of different names. She was called Magpie, Badger, and once again my mum changed the names. Now I know lots of people say don't change the names because it's bad luck. Don't know, you know, if you believe it, if you don't, you don't. I don't really know if it's a myth, but anyway, we changed the names on 2 horses, and yeah, my mum didn't realise that she was only 2. I was about 6 or 8 months old. My dad decided to put me on Maisie, and he thought at that age I would have the balance to be able to sit on a horse. So he put me on there and he let go of me and I fell. Now, I don't want to say I fell to the floor and he didn't catch me, but then I don't want to say he caught me. I think he caught me, but I'm not 100% sure. It would make sense if I did hit the head because that's why I'm a bit dopey sometimes. But no, I'm not really sure if I did actually land on the floor or if my dad managed to catch me, but either way I was very lucky. We fast forward to when I was 1 year old and I had a little Shetland again. Apology guys, I don't have a photo of this, but she was called Thumbelina and she was very old when we got her. She was like in her 30s, and at 1 obviously you are really little, you don't really sit still or anything. Now I never wanted to ride Thumbelina. I just wanted to lead her around, and apparently I used to walk around in just my nappy and lead Thumbelina around. She lived until she was 39, which is absolutely crazy. She had 21 foals, obviously not with us. This was not even the previous owner. The previous owner before that, which yeah, don't really agree with that she had that many foals, but it was just amazing that she lived until she was 39. She was a little Shetland, and she was out in the field and we had to go and pick her up with like a digger, you know, like a digger loader thing. We had to like scoop her up. That sounds really bad. and bring her back up to the stables, and me and my dad was trying to feed her with sugar beet, and she basically died in my dad's arms, and I was there. But obviously I can't really remember like that. I remember having a little pony called Thumbelina, but I can't really remember like that because I was only one. But aside Thumbelina, I also had another Shetland who was called Dylan, who I'll insert a photo now. He was such a cool Shetland, honestly. We'd done quite a bit together. Obviously Dawn is amazing as well, and I love Dawn to pieces, but I can't say, well, I can say it. Dylan was better in the respect that he could be ridden, and I've done so much with him. But don't worry, Dawn, I still love you. But we would go out hacking. I would also do some showing with him. Now I was about one or two, and I cannot tell you what shows these were, if I'm honest with you guys. I basically done all sorts with him, and then I think it was 2009 or 2010, me and my dad was going back up to stables to get Dylan ready for a show day. It was a Saturday, we was going up to bath him, etc. And we went up there and Dylan was nowhere to be seen. We were calling him, searching for him, he was nowhere. This went on for like a few days. He was all over Facebook. He was in gazettes and everything, newspapers and things. We had phone calls saying that they saw him like up country and things. We were worried that someone like stole him and he went to the slaughter, because someone rang us up and saw a little Shetland that apparently looked like him, and he was up by the slaughter and things. So obviously it was a really scary time. I was obviously so upset. Then this one particular time, again, me and my dad was just driving up the track, and there was this van in our track. So we asked him what he was doing, and so my dad had some woodlands, but the other half of the woodlands was this man, and he went up our track to get into the woodlands, even though he didn't really need to go up our track. He could have gone his own side, but anyway. And we asked him if he seen a little Shetland, because Dylan was literally like a dog, guys. He was just amazing. He was literally like a Labrador, and he was like, yeah, I saw a Shetland, and was like, can you show us? So we had to walk all into our woods. It was quite far, and Dylan was stuck all in barbed wire. He was in a really bad way, obviously dehydrated because he was there for a fair few days. So we got him out of the barbed wire, and because it was in our woods, we had to lead him out of the woods, and we just had to walk up the field. We couldn't get like any trailer there to put him in the trailer or anything, so he did have to walk. We got him all sorted and everything, obviously had the vet out, etc. He was on box rest, he had like a bit of a gammy leg. He was also like a skeleton. So Dylan was basically on recovery for a long time, quite a while, which meant I had nothing to ride. Sadly, in that time, Ellie and Fitz actually died because they were quite old. I think they died when they was like 26 or something. They both died, and Daisy was with us for a little bit longer, but again, she was in her 20s, so she also died. So I literally just had Maisie, who then went out to, when she was a bit older, when she turned 3, my dad done some groundwork with him and things, because my dad was basically like a horsemanship person, so he would break in horses and work on them and things. So my dad done all the groundwork with Maisie, and then we sent her off to be broken. Obviously, Dylan was then in recovery. Thimble sadly died, so I needed a new pony. So we was looking for a new pony, which then come along Jack. Now, Jack was a 12-hand Welsh A pony, and again, he was 1 in a million. When I went to view him, I would not get off him. I was riding him for 2 hours. I absolutely loved him. It was coming up to my 4th birthday, and I got him for my birthday. So I went to nursery. My mum picked me up at lunchtime. While I was at nursery, my dad went and picked Jack up, brought him back. like the day before, my mum took me into town to get some ribbon. She didn't tell me why I needed ribbon, but she was like, pick the colour you want, and I picked a lilac ribbon. My mum was so excited to see my face when I walked in to see Jack. By the way, guys, I just need to stop because if you can hear really heavy breathing, let me just show you. It's the cat. Sorry, my finger's in the way. He is lying on the bed and he is fast asleep, snoring. So apologies if you're wondering what that noise is. You might not be able to hear it. But anyway, let's get back on track. So my mum picked me up from nursery, and as I walked into the door, Jack was in our stable block and he had this lilac ribbon round, and apparently all I looked up and said, "Oh, hello Jack." And at the other end of the stables there was like a rocking chair, and I went and sat down, and my mum was like, "Are you not going to get on him then? Are you not going to ride him?" And I was like, "Yeah, in a minute." And my mum was like well disappointed because she was expecting me to be like well excited and everything. Obviously I was well pleased that I had Jack, guys. Like, I wasn't just like, oh, it's another pony. I was very pleased I had him, but that's just what I done. So I did ride him that day, and this is the photo of me on the first day I rode him. Yes, I am in a dress. This was after nursery. Again with Jack, I done everything with him. I took him out hacking, I would do fun rides on him, I went to pony club, I done camp on him, I done lots of things. He wasn't really the jumping type where you'd get on him and jump him round. He was really good for what I wanted him to do when I was on lead rein and they would run next to me, or one time at Pony Club we had these cones and we had to weave in and out of the cones. He was so good with that. He would take me around nice and steady in and out of the cones on my own and things. And the funny thing is Pony Club could never believe it was Jack, because he was a right nightmare when he was in the trailer. So he would load and everything, but he would be rearing and everything. He had to have cross ties when he was in the trailer because he was crazy. And every time we'd get to a Pony Club rally, people would be like, "Oh, who have you brought today?" And we're like, "Jack." And they're like, "No, that's not Jack, that's not what he's like," because he was like so crazy in the trailer, and he was such a different pony when I was on him because he was good as gold. There's like, "No, that's not Jack." And we was like, "Yeah, honestly, this is Jack, this is what he's like." I also done gymkhana with him, guys, but I have no footage of that because back then we didn't really take photos like that or videos compared to what we do now. I mean, I do have quite a few photos, but there are some stuff that I've said that I haven't got any photos or videos of, so I do apologise. So I had him until I was 6, 7. Then sadly outgrew him, but we kept him because we could. We were very lucky that we was able to keep them and we had enough space, etc. So I then got a pony on loan called Missy, who was a Dartmoor, who was 12 too. And I didn't have her for very long, guys. She was, I think she was loan with you to buy. I did not have her for very long. I mean, don't get me wrong, I absolutely loved her. But I took her up on Exmoor with my dad. Here's a photo. And she took off with me. We was just riding along, and the Exmoor like riding stables where you can go off all over Exmoor with their horses and things. They was out for a ride. Missy clocks onto them and gallops across, and back then I was so bad at steering and stopping with my reins and things that she just went, and yeah, she didn't stay for very long, so she went back, which then I got another pony called Lizzie, who was on loan. I think she was 23 when I got her. She was a pony that's been there, done it, got the t-shirt. She definitely knew what she was doing. Again, I done quite a lot with her. I wasn't actually in the pony club with her then because I decided when I was 4 that I found pony club boring. So I stopped pony club. So I just going out having lessons with someone called Sally Jobson Scott, which is out at Westwood Ho, if you guys have heard of her, if you're around this kind of area. Again, I'd hack, fun rides. I would take her showing as well. I took her to a show, and she took off with me around the ring. She got the better of me, let's just put it this way, but I had lots of fun with her. But obviously she was getting older, which she started slowing down. She was on so much to eat, she was on turmeric and that. She also had arthritis, so it kind of got to the point where it was like, she needs to stop being ridden now because it's just too much for her. What I'm wanting her to do, when I was asking her to canter, I couldn't really get her to canter and was just like, it's not fair on her. So we obviously kept her, but I just no longer rode her. So I then got another pony called Holly. Oh my god, guys, I love this pony so much. Oh, I loved her so much. So Holly come along. I got her when I was 7. Again, she was a 12-2 Welsh Brie British riding pony. Her show name was Toya Hollyoaks, and whenever I would say that to my friends at school, because that used to be my password to everything, I can tell you guys now because it's not now, but they'd be like, Hollyoaks, because they just thought my password was Hollyoaks because of the programme, and I'm like, no, that's my pony's name, and that used to be for everything. When I got Holly, she was a whizzy pony. I didn't ride her for a year because I was too scared to ride her, let's just put it this way. So let me just rephrase back to Lizzie. So if I remember rightly, we didn't stop Lizzie straight away. When Lizzie started to slow down, that's when we looked for another pony. So I was still basically riding Lizzie, but it was just like hacking and stuff. I was thinking that I just stopped and got another pony, but I didn't because I've just remembered that I didn't ride Holly for a year. So I went to view Holly, absolutely loved her. Me and my dad really wanted her. My mum was like, no, she's too much for you and that. And we were like, no, she's not, she's amazing. When she got home, then I didn't ride her. So I was riding Lizzie for a year. Holly was just put out in the field. Then when it got to the stage where I did really need to ride her, I did. My riding was awful, as you guys will see in the videos and the photos, because I've actually got so much footage of Holly. I joined the pony club with her, which was with Eggersford. I'd done my first camp and I ended up being on the lead rein. I fell off twice. It took a lot for me to get used to her because I was so used to having a nice steady pony. To be on Holly where she was whizzy and full of it was like completely different to what I'm used to. So I did go on the lead rein for a little while. The second year of camp, I kind of got it together with her a bit better, didn't fall off, and we did have quite a lot of fun. We done a bit of jumping, etc., because jumping has never been my thing, guys. It's only really been since Danny's got me into it, but I did start to do a bit with Holly because Holly was the type of pony that would be just sit and point and she will take you around the course. You don't have to worry about her stopping or anything like that because her thing was cross country. But sadly, I wasn't able to do it with her. I just didn't do it with her because, like I said, I hated jumping. We done our first showing show together and we won both of our classes and I could not believe it. We done numerous pony club rallies. Every Tuesday night it was after school. My dad would get Holly ready. My mum would pick me up from school. We would go to my dad's, load Holly up. I would eat a packed lunch on the way there for my tea, and then it would be 1 week, it would be flat work with the most amazing instructor ever, Andrew Lovell, and then the following week would be a jumping lesson. And this is, guys, when I got it really together with Holly. I was going down to Lindisleys every Friday night for a flat work lesson, really getting us going, really getting my riding going, and I started having jumping lessons with Linda as well, and I used to ride around with Katie, who you will see in some of the videos, who is riding a grey, and we wouldn't get home till 10-11 o'clock at night because I wouldn't get down to Linda's until about 7, and me and Holly just had the most amazing fun ever, and I was just getting it with her, where I had the confidence on her, and it's always the way, guys, it always happens, but I was getting confidence with my jumping. I was thoroughly enjoying it. I was getting somewhere with our schooling. I was riding in our fields at home. yeah, it was a good year until we got to 2015 and Holly had something wrong with her back, so I stopped riding her and we was waiting for the back person to come out. But it was a great big long waiting list, so we had to wait a few weeks, so Holly just was out in the field. The night before, my dad basically broke his hip like a few years before and was able to walk, not be able to walk very far and things. So my dad was like, I'm going to get Holly in from the big field and put her into the small paddock, just so that in the morning it's not so far for him to walk to get her in, because I was going to school and my mum was going to work. So my dad would kind of deal with all the stuff that would be to do with the dentist, you know, anything like that, the vets, etc. So we were like, don't do that, because Holly didn't like being in the field on her own or in the stable. She was just that type that got a bit stressy and things, and was like, don't do that because she'll just be cantering around the field and things. If you're going to do that, put Jack in the field with her or something like that. And he was like, oh no, she'll be alright, she'll be alright. So anyway, we was like, whatever. So he put Holly in the field. We went home. We actually went to Lidl's. I went home and we had a phone call from my dad and he was crying his eyes out, and we were like, what's happened? And he basically told my mum that Holly died. Basically what she'd done is she was galloping around the field and she was galloping down towards the gate. She tried to stop, but she went up over the gate, flipped over the gate, and basically died instantly and broke her neck. So as you can imagine, I was so upset. Anybody would be. I could not believe it. I was like, no, this is not right, this is not true. Obviously my dad was really upset because he obviously saw it happen as well, which was horrible. So obviously the next day I didn't go up there because my dad had to get it all sorted and move her, etc. And normally my dog Daisy would go up there every morning before school. It was like having another child. I would get up in the morning, we'd drop Daisy off to my dad, and my dad would look after her for the day and be with the horses, and then I would go to school, and then I'd come back from school and ride or pick up Daisy if I wasn't riding and things. So we couldn't take Daisy, and yeah, it was a very, very sad day. And that was the 30th of November 2015. That's crazy. It's coming up 7 years this year. So obviously after the whole thing with Holly, it was, obviously we didn't do it instantly. We weren't like, right, it's time to look for another horse, that's it, like, don't worry about Holly. It then got to me riding her, but I didn't get her until the 30th of December 2015. I had to think then. So obviously I had to think then what I was going to say. Obviously the fields were getting wet, they were muddy, we're in the middle of winter. It got to the point where I wasn't able to ride Mittens. Obviously after school it's dark and things, so my dad was just doing the groundwork with her during the day, and then other weekend I would ride her in the field because we was only walking and trotting. We would go steady and things, and I wasn't really doing much anyway because I was very nervous. Mittens was very green, wasn't really the best combination. But we had a round pen, which you guys will see in the video, and that's where we used to do all of our work. Then started taking her to some lessons and things. I took her to in-hand showing, and basically at this point I was the first person to do absolutely everything with her. The only thing I didn't do the first time was sit on her. So for me, being very inexperienced, nervous, the same as Mittens, it really is not a good idea. But luckily I had my dad who was helping me out with it, etc.
So Daisy, come here. She goes down the hill, all right? Daisy, come here. Daisy.
Girl, Mittens.
Good girl.
She's a good girl.
You go on a little bit. Good girl, Mitts. Well done.
I took Mittens to an in-hand show, because I was only 9, I wasn't very big. Everybody else had like little 12-2 ponies, 11-2 ponies, and my nan was like, she's a bit big, I think you need to look for like a smaller pony. So we was like, okay. So then we looked out for a small pony, which was another 12-2, which is Jules. We drove all the way to Cornwall to get her, and when I rode her, it was literally just like riding Holly. So I was like, oh my god, yes, I want her. Now Jules is a show pony. She's qualified to go to Hoys. She's a really high level show pony. She qualified for lots of other stuff the year that I got her, but because my riding wasn't up to scratch of how it should be for the showing and things, I wasn't really into it and I was nervous. I didn't bother going to any of it, but we had all the certificates of her qualification. We got her, I think it was like the 24th of January, and we sent her straight down to Linda's, where her daughter was about 16 at the time, and she done a lot of showing and things. So we got Katie to ride Jules, and Jules would go and trot in, walk and trot, but then when you asked for canter, she would buck. And my mum went down to watch her, and Katie was like, she doesn't feel right, mum, she doesn't feel right. And my mum was like, no, she isn't right, we're going to call the back person out. So we called this back person out, who basically specialises in racehorses, because we was recommended to him by someone that we knew, and we didn't tell him that she was only a pony because he wouldn't have come out. But when he come out, he was like, oh, he come up with like this stool, and he was like, oh, I was expecting a big horse, and we was like, no. So we'd done this work on Jules, we had the vet out and everything. Turned out she had a back problem, hence why she was bucking. When I rode her, she bucked me off, and I literally got a hit across the fence and really hurt my neck. Then I ended up having to wear a back protector at all times on her, because just every time I'd canter she would buck. We got the saddle sorted for her, we got her a new saddle for her, and everything, and we was basically just working along. The saddle fitted the back person, and like I said, we had the vet out and things, and we could only keep her sound for 3 months. And in those 3 months when I was riding her, I was going for lessons, and oh my god guys, she would float. It was amazing to ride, it was just so good. She was so I just want to say guys, in this video I hadn't had Jules very long at all. It wasn't long after these videos that Jules actually bucked me off against the fence. So Jules had a very bouncy trot and something that I was not used to, so it took time for me to get her trot. And as you can see, my riding is absolutely awful. You would definitely not think she is a show pony here. It took me a little while to get used to how to actually ride her correctly, as well as me never doing it before, but hope you enjoy. Sorry about that then.
Back her up some exercises. Make her walk out now. Walk her out. Well, walk her out. Come on, that's it. Go on, walk her out. Not trot, walk her. Walk her.
But like I said, we could only keep her sound for 3 months, and then she'd go downhill again, and then we'd have the back person out and things, and we'd done it for quite a while, keeping her sound for 3 months, and then it just got to the point where I was like, it's not fair on her, you know, I'm only 9, we're in the middle of winter, the ground's wet and muddy and things, it just doesn't really work out. We also thought that I'm probably at the bigger end of her as well, so that won't help her whole back situation. So we was like, we got another field ornament. So she went out in the field alongside Jack, alongside Lizzie, Maisie come back at that stage, Dylan. My dad had horses as well. We had Murphy, the coloured cob, we had Buzz, Lucy, a Lusitana, she was an Andalusian, Shadow, who was a quarter horse. These were the coloured cob Murphy, which I'll insert a photo now, was meant to be for my mum so that she could ride out with me and my dad, but after my mum having me, she lost her confidence and didn't want to ride, so Murphy ended up to be my dad's horse, alongside Lucy, who was an absolute nutcase. When you was hacking out, she was so fast that none of my ponies could catch up, and if my dad stopped to wait for me, she would just rear, so it wasn't really the best when I was so young. So that's when my dad got another horse, which was a quarter horse, Shadow, and he didn't really do anything because he was basically waiting for a hip replacement, so he was riding but he was in too much pain to ride, so he didn't really ride like that. So it ended up where I was having to take my ponies out to ride with someone called Marilyn, who I used to have lessons with, and I'd go out hacking with her because where we kept the horses we were right on a busy main road, and obviously I wasn't old enough at the stage to ride out on my own and things. So yeah, and Mittens. So after the whole thing, we was probably going for nearly a year with Jules before we decided to give her with a field ornament, because like I said, the 3 months she'd be fine, and then yeah, it's all very confusing. It turns out that when I went to actually view Jules back in the January 2016 it was, they sedated her so that she wasn't in pain, so that you could walk, trot and canter her on both reins without her bucking, but we found that out later on, a few months down the line, if that makes sense. But yeah, there was nothing we could do. Then circumstances completely changed. Obviously we went into winter, so it was hard for me to ride, and I had Mittens still, but then my dad died on November 2016 on the 30th, so obviously I completely stopped riding and things, and it was a struggle because we had all of these horses, you know, we had like 10 of them, and they were coming in at night time, obviously going out daytime. I was obviously going to school, my mum was working, I was constantly ill that year. Every night after school we'd obviously go and have to do the horses, and we had no electric. We used to have to use a generator for the lights to work, but again the lights wasn't very good even when we had the generator, but we never knew how to do the generator because my dad always used to do the generator, and also he used to muck out the horses during the day while I was at school and while my mum was working, so that they would be all done in the evening, so we never had to worry about it. But obviously when everything all changed and things, I had to shine a torch because we couldn't get the generator to work, so that my mum could see to muck out, and we was getting home ridiculously late and it just was no good. So it got to the point where I was like, we really didn't want to, but we had to. We kind of had no choice. It was just getting ridiculous. We was like, we need to start getting rid of the ponies. And obviously, as you can tell, we don't like getting rid of the ponies because we kept them all. But we was like, we've got to. So I gotta think who went first. So we messaged Lizzie's owner, who was out at Witheridge, to say, you know, that circumstances have changed because we wanted to keep all our horses until the end. That circumstances have changed. Is it okay for Lizzie to come back home? And it took her ages to reply. And then her lorry went wrong on things. And because my dad always used to tow us everywhere, my mum didn't have a truck or anything, so we had to get someone to move the horses for us. So we then took Lizzie back, and Lizzie was 31, I think, when she went back. And because of her arthritis and everything, the lady said that it'll probably be her last year, which was really sad. So Lizzie went back, which was obviously so upsetting. We were both devastated, crying our eyes out. Jack and Maisie went to one of our old farriers. Their son was basically looking for a pony, and we wasn't really expecting both of them to go. We were like, we've got 2 ponies that would suit you. You can choose which one you want. And the little boy absolutely loved Jack, and Jack is a very required taste because he's absolutely amazing, but he would bite. You know, on the ridden and everything he was amazing, but on the ground he was a little bit different. But the boy absolutely loved Jack, and that's what I was like when I first went to see Jack. There was just something about him. But his mum preferred Maisie, and they were like, you know what, we'll have the pair of them, because Maisie was obviously 11 too. Jack was 12 hands, so he can ride Maisie until he's outgrown Maisie, and then he can have Jack. And we was like, yeah, that's fine, they've both got to go. Obviously we was just giving them away, but they did very kindly send me some money, which was really kind of them, a little bit later on down the line. So upsetting to see Jack and Maisie go. They come and pick them up, and yeah, it was so sad to see the pair of them go. So those 2 went. Trying to think. Dylan went out on loan out to Southcote, which you guys will have seen when I went cross country. No, you guys, yes, for a hunter trial, you guys did see. So Dylan's out there, and he's still out there now. Sadly, Jack died 2 years ago. He done something to his shoulder. I'm pretty sure like he dislocated it or something. So he got put down. Maisie's been moved, the poor girl, from different places. She went to that place, to a different place, to a local riding stable, to another like local riding stable, and her name has changed every single place. I know she's all alright and everything. She's in a riding stable and things, but it's quite sad how much she moved. Obviously, we didn't wish that upon her whatsoever. Murphy we kept, Jules we kept, Mittens we kept, Buzz we sent back because he was basically on livery kind of thing, like full-time livery he was. So we sent Buzz back. Shadow had like, she was ill. I can't even remember what was wrong with her now, but there was something wrong with her, and we had to have the vet out and things, and then they said that the best thing for her was to be put to sleep. So we ended up putting her to sleep, which was sad. Lucy was only on loan to my dad, so we sent Lucy back. Yeah, we basically had to get rid of them all, and the only ones we kept was Murphy, Jules and Mittens. We sent Mittens to a schooling livery because obviously me and my dad was the one that was working with it, but my mum's not inexperienced, but is in the respect of working with like a green horse, if you know what I mean. So we wanted her to be schooled properly, so we sent her off just for a few months. And Jules was another pony that wouldn't stay on her own, so we basically kept Murphy to keep Jules company. So we had those 2 up there, which obviously it was a big difference to us guys, and it becomes summer and that, so it was so much easier, but it was very heartbreaking to let all of the horses go. It was really sad. I only know where a few are now because some have been moved on. Lucy's somewhere up on Exmoor. Murphy, who I will talk about in a minute. But anyway, when Mittens went down to be schooled, the woman that was schooling her was like, Mittens is still a bit big. At this point, I'm 10, I think. Mittens is still a bit big. You need a 12-2. And my mum was like, well, I have a 12-2, and I thought Millie was at the bigger end of her. So she also has back problems and things. So we've just decided to basically retire her. She was about 16 at the time. And the woman was like, bring her down and we'll see. And Mum was like, I will bring her down and you can ride her. But if you feel that she's in any bit of discomfort, no matter what, get off, stop riding her and let me know and we'll get the vet out. And she was like, yeah, I will. So we took Jules down there. Not really knowing how Jules is going to deal with stuff because, like I said, she's a very stressy type, don't like being on her own. Changing the routine and thing is like a big deal to Jules. So we was a bit like, new place, she's going to be very stressy, but it was like she's been there all her life. It was crazy. The woman rode her for a full week, then told us at the end of the week that Jules isn't right. And we were like, but we told you to tell us the first time you rode her. They got their own vet out, this woman did, and the vet basically looked up and said, you can give her I think it was a cortisone injection, I might be wrong, but I'm pretty sure that's what it was, in her back, but you will have to ride her every single day and not give her a day off, because if you give her a day off, you'll relapse it and it'll have to start again. So you have to ride in all weathers no matter what. And my mum was like, I'm 10, not many 10-year-olds want to ride every single day. That is a lot. And what about if one day we generally can't ride and we have to relapse it and everything? Not only that, we wasn't planning on keeping Jules where Mittens was. We was on about taking her back. We're in a field. It's not going to work out. We was just like, there's just no point doing it. She can just go back out in the field to retire. It's not fair on her to have an injection. So we just took her back home. She went out in the field with Murphy. The woman was like, I have a pony for you who is 12-2, who's perfect. So I went to ride her, which was actually my birthday in 2017, that was. Rode her, fell in love with her. She was to stay at the yard where Mittens was, while Mittens was still there being schooled. So I kept Minnie, that was her name, Minnie. We'll insert some photos now. And Minnie was 19 or 20 when I had her, and I didn't go out in the trailer with her. I literally just hacked her on a Saturday and a Sunday with my friend, and then during the week after school, because they were quite far out from my school and things, I'd be riding in the dark in floodlights in the sand school. And I had her for almost a year, and I did take her once out in the trailer to a Tyler Bradshaw flat work lesson, which the videos will be up now. And then all of a sudden Minnie kept going lame, and it was like all the time. I would ride her, then she'd go lame, and then we'd be told that she'd be alright, but then I'd ride her and she's hopping lame, and then she would be alright, and then I'd ride her and then she'd be lame, and it was just like such a pain, because I would go there to ride and then I wouldn't be able to, and I know it's not her fault that she keeps going lame, but it was a bit of a pain. Also, I was proper getting at the bigger end of her. There is a photo here. It was a Christmas Eve ride, and you'll see my my legs are very long on her. And I got to the point where I wanted to start riding Mittens, so I did start riding Mittens when Minnie was lame, and I seemed to be getting on with her, and we was like, you know what, I can continue on. From here, I'm going to have her now. We're going to stop loaning Minnie. So I stopped loaning Minnie, carried on riding Mittens. We kept her at that place because I had all of the facilities and everything, but it was just too far for us to travel. So as I kind of got it with Mittens, we decided that we would move her closer to my school, closer to home and things. So we moved her to a livery yard that had a sand school and things. I started hacking her out with some people. I would ride in the school and things. I'd done my first ever dressage test. Here's a photo with it. I jumped a few cross poles, but I was petrified. And yeah, mainly hacked. I took her to some showing classes. Mittens would take off with me across the sand school in my lessons. I would be just trotting along having a lesson, and the next minute I'm going across the sand school with Mittens' head like that, tongue over the bit, and just gone, and there was nothing I could do. My instructor got on her because they just thought it was me, as they do, and she couldn't even hold Mittens. Mittens done the exact same thing with her. My instructor also got on her, and Mittens bolted with her all the way up to the top yard. Mittens really did not like my instructor, and my instructor really did not like Mittens either. And my instructor couldn't believe how well I coped with Mittens. I didn't get frustrated with her or anything. I was nice and chilled on her, and it didn't seem to bother me or anything, because she was like, there is no way I would be riding Mittens now if she was like this. Summer 2018, Mittens had the farrier, and he turned her back out because at our yard the farrier was basically there, so we could only have the farrier that was at the yard because it was basically his yard, if that makes sense. So he would just bring Mittens in, do her shoes, and then would turn her back out in the field while I'm at school, etc. So me and my friend went up to bring Mittens in because my friend and I was going to ride her in the school, and I was leading her and she was lame. And we was like, oh, and you know, like sometimes when you have the farrier out and maybe they might pinch the foot or something, and we thought maybe that's happened, or the shoe's a bit tight. So it's like we'll give her a couple of days off. So she went in the stable, and then the next day the farrier was up the yard and was like, what was Mittens like to be shoed last night? And he was like, oh, I think she's done a check ligament. You can either call the vet or you can leave it. And we were like, what? So I rushed out to the field, and in that time Mittens' leg, I'm not even joking, was swollen like this, and it was so hot, and we was like, oh my god, like we could not believe that he didn't tell us, because we saw him the night that she had her feet done, and he drove right past us and didn't bother to tell us that she's done a check ligament in. So we called the vet. The vet come out, and she was like, oh, it'll only be about a month's box rest, that's it. And we was like, you know, a month's a long time, but we can cope with that, that's fine. A month later we have a different vet come out, and he was like, oh, be wary, because when they're in not riding stables, when they're in box rest, they go a bit wide. And we were like, not Mittens, no way, she's nothing like that, she's as cool as a cucumber, she's been fine the whole time. And my mum had to do like walk up and walk back and things, and he was like, oh, what a little poppet she is. And we was like, yeah, she's as good as gold. We took her in the stable, and he had to do something to her, and I honestly cannot think of the life of me what he was doing to her. Mittens went crazy at him. She literally lashed out at him, and we was like, we have never seen Mittens like this before. He could not believe it. He was like, it's not a month's box rest, she's going to be on box rest for 9 months. And we were like, you what? And he was like, yeah, this is a serious injury. And we was like, oh my god. So it ended up where she just had to be in the stable, wasn't allowed to go out, and then he would come out, and then it got to the point where we was allowed to hand graze her. And obviously month by month she was getting a bit stir crazy, any horse would. I was out out grazing her, sorry, and she reared up in my face. She went completely crazy. It got to the point where we wasn't able to have this vet out, he was a man, because she really did not like him. We could only have a woman out with her. She did go proper crazy. In that time, obviously I wasn't able to ride, I had no other horse to ride, so I went to a riding stable. Now the riding stable that I went to, it's really funny because Alyssa, who has Todd, keeps a horse there, and they're a riding stable, but they're like a dressage riding stable, and one of the teachers is like a top dressage riding stable, and you get to ride, like, all the ponies are basically really well schooled, and I've never been used to having a really well schooled pony except from Jules, but obviously I didn't get to do that much with Jules because of her whole back situation, so it was amazing to ride a pony that's really well schooled. So I was going there every week having lessons, basically just to keep my riding up until I could get back on Mittens, because when it got to the point where I could ride Mittens, I would have only been able to have walked her for 6 weeks, trotted her for 6 weeks, and then canter her, so it would have been a long period, and then having 9 months off would just set me right back with my riding. So we obviously wanted to keep on top of it, then my instructor was going to camp and she needed some saddles, and we had some saddles, so my mum dropped them down to her, and my instructor was like to me, I think it's time to look for a new pony for Millie, get a bigger one. Not because I had outgrown Mittens, because I still haven't outgrown Mittens. I am a bit big for her now, but height wise I haven't outgrown Mittens. I'm not that tall, guys. So she was like, just get another horse. My mum was like, no, it's fine, she's going to the riding stables once a week, we'll just wait the 9 months. And she was like, no, I think it's time, and if you get a 14-2 it will last longer. Sorry guys, I just had someone knock at the door and to see if we've had a power cut, but we haven't. So once we got Danny, we basically wanted to move Mittens way before I even got Danny and things, because we didn't like the yard, but because of Mittens' injury we couldn't travel her or anything, so she had to stay there. So as soon as we could travel her, we moved her. But if you guys are wondering why we moved to a livery yard and didn't take Mittens back to where my dad's was, basically everything changed, guys. A whole complete circumstances where we had to get off that place, which was really annoying. So Jules was moved to a different place, which is where Danny and Dawn is now, and she was accompanied by a Clydesdale. We shared it with this other girl. So Jules was happy there, and then I had Mittens out in Torrington, and then I had Danny at Yelland, and it was a complete circle we was doing because we lived quite far out, and it would take us like 20 minutes to get to Jules in the morning, and then about another 20 minutes from Jules to Danny, and then another 20 minutes to Danny to Mittens, and then I'd have to get to school, and that was like, we was getting up so early and getting home so late, it was just ridiculous. So as soon as we could move Mittens, we moved Mittens to where Jules was, which worked out perfectly because the girl that was sharing with us got rid of her horse, so we obviously needed something to keep Jules company because she wouldn't stay on her own, but luckily we could move Mittens by then, so it worked out perfect. So then those two was together. Danny was down at Yelland, which we then moved him up to 5 minutes away from our house, which was just amazing. Mittens was basically still recovering from her injury. She was getting better and there wasn't that long left. I want to say I could have started riding her again in August, but because I had Danny I wasn't really worried about riding Mittens, and we just thought we'd just give her longer off to make sure it proper heals, etc. So I spent my whole time riding Danny, competing him, everything like that. And then in January Danny went back, and I had nothing to ride, so I decided that I would get Mittens back into work. I had to do 6 weeks of walk, 6 weeks of trot. I'd done the whole 6 weeks of walk, just started to do the 6 weeks of, I think I was like a week or two in of the trot of the 6 weeks, and then I got Danny back in March 2019. So Mittens, I just stopped riding her completely because I just focused all on Danny, and I was getting a bit big for her anyway, so Mittens just kind of went out in the field and I would ride her on a one-off, and my friend Maisie would come up because she left school in 2019, so she would come up in her time off and take Mittens out for a hack and things, or I would ride Danny and she'd ride Mittens and things, and that's kind of what we've done. Then we decided to send Mittens off to somewhere else because she'd never been hacked out on her own, and my mum didn't want me to be the first person to do that, if that makes sense. She wanted somebody else to do it, because I wasn't very confident on Mittens like that. I definitely got better to when I first got her, and hacking in that, in company in that, I was confident in things, and I was confident on her, but like I'm so much more confident now, guys, since I've got Danny. Danny's completely brought my confidence right up. So if you saw me 4 or 5 years ago on Mittens, I've completely changed with everything. So we sent her off to someone else to hack her out alone and things and get her to see more. I just focused on Danny, and Jules would have obviously been on her own when I take Danny out for hacks and when I took him out in the trailer and things. So we were really friendly with one of the rescue centres, which was literally just down the road from us, and we spoke to her to see if we could borrow a horse for 2 weeks because that's how long Mittens was going away for, and she gave us a little Shetland, which was Dawn. And Dawn come to us and she was very, very skinny, covered in lice and things. So we had to sort out the whole thing with the lice situation, and we was trying to put weight on her and things, and we felt really sorry for her, and my nan was like, you can't get rid of her, and my uncle was like, you can't get rid of her, my mum was like, she is going back, we're not having any more horses. Well guys, we've still got her today. We ended up keeping her. I bought her a rug because it was starting to rain, and we had to clip her right out. We literally had to hog her and everything because we treated the lice, but she was like bold in places and things, so we just clipped her right out. Here's a photo of her, what she was like. And yeah, we had Dawn, and then two or 3 weeks went by. We had Mittens back home. Mittens was horrible to Dawn, absolutely horrible, because Jules wasn't very nice to Mittens. Jules wasn't very nice to Dawn, to be honest. But Mittens was horrible. I bought this brand new rug for Dawn. I was well happy with it. I was like, oh my god, she looks so cute. She's in a faux rug, and I think, well, please. First day putting her on it, Mittens comes home, takes a big chunk out of the rug and rips it. I was near to tears. I spent a lot of money on that rug, guys, and Mittens just goes and bites it. I was like, are you having a laugh? I was so annoyed at that. Anyway, I was like, I am not buying another rug if Mittens is just going to trash them. So we got like this stuff to put on it to patch it up so it was waterproof for Dawn. And yeah, that was basically it. Mittens just spent a winter off, just out in the field. Obviously, when I say out in the field, she'd come in at night time through the winter, her and Jules. And then in 2020, we was like, Mittens needs to be going out and doing things. She absolutely loves hacking and things. It's just like, you know, it's not fair on her just being in the field. So we got a girl to come up and ride Mittens, and she basically loaned her from our yard. She was like a year or two older than me, and she would get a taxi up to our stables, and she would ride her, do everything with her. We'd ride out together through the holidays and things. And then it basically didn't work out, so she basically stopped and we continued having Mittens, and then a few months went by. We then went into lockdown. It was just the start of the lockdown, and we were like, Mittens needs to go out and do things, and I'm not doing it with her. I did actually start riding her at the beginning of lockdown, and I wanted to continue riding her and keep Danny and Mittens alongside through lockdown. But my mum was like, there's no point, just we need to put her out on loan or something. And when we saw someone we knew who actually had Maisie on loan for a few years, and she was looking for a bigger horse, and we was like, we'll see if she wants Mittens because we know that she'll be looked after. So she came out to see Mittens. They rode her and was like, we're having her, we'll go and pick her up on Monday. And we was like, god, that soon. So she had Mittens. And she's been out on loan for 2 years, and she seems happy and things, which is really nice. We're actually going to go and see her very soon, so maybe we might do a vlog about that, because you guys obviously haven't seen Mittens, but you will have now seen the photos and videos of us. So that was Mittens out on loan. Then I had a whole problem thing with Dan of his saddle and things, which is going to be in a completely different vlog that I am going to talk about. But basically Dan was off work for 4 months, and then we went back into work, had a whole year, and I just had Jules, Dawn and Danny, just the 3 of them. And then in 2021 we were like, Jules, like I've said a lot earlier on, Jules is a very stressy type. She can't cope with change or anything like that. And when I would take Dan out, she'd get stressy, and yeah, it was just getting too much, unfair on her and things. And we was just like, and this, we didn't just decide last year, guys. We decided a few years ago, if we find the perfect home for her, we're going to let her go, as much as we don't want to, because we love every single one of our horses and we would have loved to have kept every single one of them and still have them to this day. I mean, some of them we might have lost by now, but you know what I mean. But it just got to a stage where I was like, if we find the perfect one for her, then she can go. But it had to be where she wasn't going to be ridden. And you know when people say, oh no, we won't ride her, and then you see it on Facebook and they're riding her. And we were like, it can't be that. It has got to be with a horse that doesn't go anywhere. She can't be left on her own and anything. And we thought, no one's going to want a horse like Jules. No offence to poor old Jules. No one is going to want a horse like her because she's a right nightmare at times. But anyway, I saw this woman advertising on Facebook. Wouldn't leave the yard and things, and I was like, this sounds perfect. It wasn't too far and things, so I messaged to say that I had Jules, explained everything about her. Obviously didn't lie anything about it because there's no point. Same with all our other horses, we did not lie one bit about anything about them, because what's the point? There's just no point in lying. I wouldn't like it if someone lied to me about a horse, so why should we lie to them? So message, explain, she's a very stressy type, she can't be left on her own, she doesn't keep her weight on very easy through the winter. You have got to keep her rugged. I mean, she'd have like 3 or 4 rugs on through the winter with a winter coat because you just couldn't keep the weight on her. She'd be fed so much. We explained everything, and she's like, yeah, that's fine. She'd come up and saw her, she was like, yeah, I'll have her. And she was like, how about I have her for 3 months to see how she gets on, to make sure that she settles in, she's happy there, to make sure that the women's horses are happy with Jules and things, and if they're not happy, if Jules is not happy there, she'll come home. If she is happy, she'll stay there. And we was like, that's fine. You know, we want Jules to be happy just because she's nothing to do with us anymore. We want to make sure that she's happy and everything. So we went to see her place because we wanted to make sure that it would be suitable for Jules and things. So we went to see it and it was perfect, and we thought it's going to be amazing. They lived on a dairy farm, so it was dairy grass, which was amazing for Jules. It's not amazing for a lot of horses, but for Jules you wouldn't have had to have worried about her being out on it because of the type she is, because she's just, yeah, crazy. So she went to pick Jules up. That was a very, very sad day saying goodbye to her. It was very sad, because we had her in our life for 5 years. So she went off and the woman sent us a video of her, and we couldn't believe how well she was settled in. We could not believe it. We was like, wow, you would have thought she'd been there all her life. It was amazing. We can go and see her whenever we like. I've been sent photos of her and things, and she's really happy. I actually got a photo sent a few months ago, and I couldn't believe how well she's looking. I mean, she is looking amazing, and she's basically gone to wean off the foals. So the woman breeds, so when they're weaning the foals, Jules is going to be their company, so she's never going to be left on their own. They've got about 4 or 5 horses, and the woman likes to event and likes to do in-hand showing and things, but there's always going to be a horse at home with Jules, which works out amazing. And we could see that Jules was really happy there, and we were like, we gave her passport and was like, she's yours. So we've basically given Jules to this lady, and like I said, I'm in contact with her, and I know she's happy and things, so I'm really happy. As long as Jules is happy, I'm happy, you know. I just want to go back because I completely forgot to say, I feel like this vlog is such a disaster, honestly guys, I apologise. But when we moved Jules from my dad's, obviously I had Murphy there as well, and this is the most upsetting thing ever, but because of circumstances and things, we couldn't take Murphy with us. He had to stay at my dad's, which was awful, guys. It was horrible. When we was packing up all our stuff to leave, to put Jules in the trailer, sorry guys if I cry because it was horrible, Murphy was trying to load himself to come with us, and it was so sad to see his face. He wasn't coming with us, and when we loaded Jules, and we shut it all up and things. Jules was whinnying because obviously she doesn't like being on her own and things, and Murph was whinnying, and obviously it was a 20-acre field. It is massive to be on his own when he's been used to having like 10 horses with him. You know, we had him for like 9-10 years. So for him to be on his own was just horrible. And when we was driving down the track, and we was driving along the main road, Jules was whinnying, you could hear Murphy whinnying. Murph trotted out into the back field, which was along the main road, so we could see him in there on his own. And honestly, guys, it was the saddest thing ever. We never thought we would have to do that, ever. So we took Jules to where I said where Mittens was, just for like 2 weeks, because we had nowhere to put her. And we was very lucky that we was able to take Jules where Mittens was just for a few weeks until we could sort something else, which then she moved to where the horses are now, like I've already said. But we used to have to drive up and down past where my dad was to get to school and back home, and every morning we would see Murph stood in the field on his own, and he just looked so depressed, but there was nothing we could do about it because it was out of our control. Else we would have obviously brought him with us or tried to find somewhere for him if we had to. But yeah, it was so sad. But I found out, I don't even know how I found out, but like a few months later, he was probably there for 4 or 5 months on his own, and we would just see him stood there, and I don't even know how I found that he was there. But basically I found out where Murph was, like this was 2 years ago now when I found out where he was. This is like, you know, this is 4 years down the line. Well, this is coming up 6 years now, but this was 4 years ago when we left him, if that makes sense. So I found him like 2 years later, and I actually put a photo up on my Facebook of Murphy and me on Lizzie, and this woman messaged me and was like, "That's Murphy," and I was like, "Yeah," and she's like, something like, "You're more than welcome to come and see him." I can't even remember now, guys, what it was. And I was obviously like well happy about it. I was like, yeah, I'm gonna go and see him and things. And went to see him, and he's actually out at Coombe Martin, and he's so happy. Like, he has got the best life ever you could ever wish for. I mean, he is a pampered horse. He has absolutely everything. He was hogged, he was clipped right out, he has arthritis, so he's on supplements, he has his arthritic band things to put around his legs. He's like on a massive farm with lots of other horses. He takes him out riding around the farm, and we'll take him for some canters and things, and he's well happy there. He was such a bolshy old boy, he was, with us. Anything to do with food, he would be there. When he was on box rest for 10 months once, and you couldn't get in the stable because he would just barge you out, so you would have to throw apples into his stable to occupy him so that you could go into the stable to get the hay net out and things. And the woman was like, God, he had no manners when we first got him. We've really had to tell him. And it was so funny. But yeah, he's doing amazing. I mean, he's still going. He's about 25, 26 now, and he is just looking fantastic. I was very lucky that the lady let me ride him. I got to take him for a canter around the field, which I will show you, and I got a photo with him, and I burst into tears when I saw him because I just couldn't believe how happy he looked and everything. The woman said that she had somebody out to talk to him, which I'm pretty sure it's probably that AJ, who we had up for Danny, and she was saying about Murphy said how traumatised he was, and he didn't, like, the last few months before he went to her, he was really unhappy and depressed and things, which we knew he would be. And it's awful to feel that a horse can be like that, but like I said, it was completely out of our control. We physically could have not have done anything. We had to drive off and leave him, which was just awful. But yeah, guys, that is basically my riding journey. I've done it pretty much my whole life, and I've done all sorts of things with multiple different ponies. And like I said, if the circumstances were different, we would have had all of those horses now if we could have. Yeah, I know where a few of them are, and the ones that I know where they are, they're really happy. I know a few that's died, which is sad. And I suppose that's the way it is, which is horrible. But yeah, that is it, guys. I don't really know what else to say. My riding journey obviously continues for years and years on with my king, Danny. But yeah, I hope you've enjoyed. A bit of a long one. Sorry it's a bit chatty. Sorry it's a bit of a rubbish talk. I don't think I've forgotten anything. I am filming on my iPad, so apologies if the quality is not that good, and I'm also editing on my iPad just for storage reasons. But yeah, sorry if it's a bit chatty, sorry if I sound a bit dopey on any of the footages. And yeah, apologies for any bad filming qualities. But please make sure that you like and subscribe if you haven't already, and I'll see you all next time. Bye!